Video games are designed to be fun. Day-to-day life is stressful, so as humans, we seek escape from this in the form of entertainment. If you're watching this video, that means that for you, that's probably video games. But what do you do when you play one of the best video games you've played in a very long time, and it tries its best at almost every turn to not serve as your escape, to not always be fun? Because sometimes the best form of escape isn't actually fun at all. It's immersion. The opening hours of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 are punishing for very specific reasons, and most of them come down to how little the game does in order to point you in any kind of safe direction. You're dropped into the world with no clear path forward and no safety net underneath you. There is no moment where the game will say, here is how you get on your feet. Instead, you are expected to work that out while already struggling to stay fed and alive. Almost immediately, you run into the most basic problem. Survival costs money, and you don't have any. Food isn't optional, rest isn't optional, and neither are getting the equipment that you need if you don't want to get destroyed in every single fight. The game doesn't just hand you weapons and armour that are going to be good enough for you, it doesn't funnel you towards an obvious way of earning them either. You have to explore, ask around, take on small jobs, scavenge, or gamble on a game of dice. You have to fight for your right to play this game. Early mistakes aren't gentle learning moments. If you spend all of your money poorly, or if you pick the wrong fight or you make the wrong dialogue choice, you can end up way worse off than you were before. What makes this especially rough is that none of this is framed as a sort of tutorial phase. You are learning how to survive at the same time you're actually learning how the game even functions. Combat is dangerous long before you have the gear or the skill to handle it, so avoiding fights becomes its own sort of skill. Travelling takes time and planning, because being out too long without food or rest creates a lot of problems. Even something as simple as deciding where to go next and where you would potentially rest along the way carries risk, because wandering into the wrong area really early on can end with you losing progress, money, or your life. You can't even quick save either. You need to have a potion in order to even save the game, or a bed to sleep on. That lack of direction is what nearly pushed me away. It's not that the game is constantly killing you, it's that it leaves you alone with a long list of needs and very few answers. Before you can even think about mastering the combat, or getting involved and ingrained in the quests, or any of your long-term goals, you have to solve the basics. How do you eat today? How are you going to get a weapon you can use? Where can you do anything that you need in order to simply live? I'm not somebody who can often stomach a game that makes Tedium a core pillar of its design. When I realised that the basic upkeep of your character was a bunch of drawn out mini games, I was not best pleased. By hour 70 though, I was excited to do these mini games. I wanted to smack my sword 50 times in order to craft it. It was mine. I made it. I wanted to craft my own potions. I wanted to glance back at the book and remember how long I needed to let things simmer. I wanted to use the mortar and pestle myself. These are completely mundane tasks that, if you were to ask me honestly, I still feel are probably wholly unnecessary. Yet, I still wanted to do them. Little things like that are something I would have completely skipped if the game had given me the option to do so. Yet it added so much flavour and earnestness to this world. For a long stretch of this game, progress is measured in stability. Having food for the night, owning a weapon that you know won't break, is really, really important, and that can be a hard sell early on, especially when most other games really rush to make you feel capable. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 instead asks you to survive first, and only later does it start teaching you how to truly play the game. Speaking of actually playing the game, combat is where that early struggle sharpens into something much more concrete. It's also where I spent the longest time bouncing between frustration and reluctant acceptance. At first, fighting in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 feels deeply unintuitive, if you're coming from almost any other game. Attacks aren't abstracted into light and heavy attacks, although you do have them. See, every single swing has a direction, chosen on a star-shaped reticle, and that direction is the direction you will hit or block. Enemies read it, they react to it, and punish you if you repeat yourself. Blocking works in a very similar way. You are expected to match the angles and time your guard, paying attention to what the opponent is actually doing. Early on, this creates a combat loop that feels a bit like rock, paper, scissors played at full speed. You swing from one direction, the enemy blocks it, you try another, they counter, you get impatient, you overextend, and suddenly you're eating a riposte that chunks away half of your health or one-shots you if you don't have a helmet on. Stamina also drains quickly, and once it's gone, everything falls apart, your attacks slow down, your blocks fail, even a basic opponent can become dangerous. It doesn't help that at the early stage of the game, Henry is genuinely bad at fighting. Swings are sluggish, the reactions are late, and even when you do the right thing, it doesn't feel like you're being rewarded for doing so. The game refuses to let you brute force combat through aggression. Charging in and trading blows almost always ends in defeat, especially against opponents that know what they're doing. Your positioning matters, your spacing matters, and your timing matters more than how powerful you are. Combos do exist, but they require precision and commitment. What changed things for me was the slow unlocking of techniques and, more importantly, understanding why they exist. Mechanics such as the Master Strike are more than just flashy counters. The Master Strike is a complete turning point. Suddenly, you can turn defense into an attack with ease, reading an incoming attack and then responding with a perfectly timed block that turns into this counter-attack feels incredibly transformative, and when you start being able to consistently nail down the timing of it, you will never look back. The same systems that felt opaque and unfair earlier start to reveal a logic to them. Directional attacks stop feeling random, blocking starts feeling unreliable. You suddenly start to feel somewhat in control of the combat, which is something most games would give you instantly, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 makes you earn that. The combat will get easier, but the game didn't get easier. You just got better at it. And this is sort of how the philosophy of the entire game works. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 never bends to what you want to do in the moment. You might have a plan, you might have a quest marker, or a clear idea of how this play session is going to go, but the game is perfectly happy to let that fall apart if you're not ready to do that. If you want to pick a lock because that seems like a smart solution, well, if you haven't practiced lockpicking, you're not picking that lock. If you want to win a fight because narratively it feels like you should, well, if you're not good enough at the sword fighting, you won't. The game doesn't meet you halfway just because your intentions make sense. This rigidity ties directly into how the progression works. You don't level up by ticking boxes and spending points on abstract upgrades. You get better at things by doing them. Lockpicking improves by picking locks. Sword skills improve by fighting, training and surviving encounters. Speech improves by actually talking. Persuasion and whatnot. The more you do it, the better Henry gets at it. Every single action you make leaves a permanent mark on your character sheet, and over time, those marks really do start to add up, and the result is that your Henry starts to feel like your Henry. A Henry who sneaks and steals and avoids fights is fundamentally different from one who trains daily and solves every problem with steel. This is also where a lot of people would drop off. Early on, a lot of the things you're doing don't really seem to be worthwhile at the time. Why am I having to carry 10 big sacks that are heavy and make me walk really slow and I can't sprint? Why do I need to do that? Well, what you don't consider in the early game when you're doing that is that the game has just given you some free points into your strength. Henry has just become stronger, and all you had to do was walk to and from somewhere a few times. Once you push through this initial wall and the basics stop dominating every decision, the game really starts to open up. There isn't a single obvious turning point where everything suddenly becomes easy, but instead you realise that you're moving through this world with confidence now rather than caution. You know how long you can travel before you need to rest, what fights are worth taking and which ones you should leave alone. The towns stop feeling like obstacles and full of things you can't afford and start feeling like places you understand with people you know and you recognise. Almost every town you visit will at some stage feel at least a little bit like home. What's striking at this stage is how alive the world feels without constantly demanding your attention. The people that live within this world follow their own schedules. The shops open and close. Guards notice patterns and opportunities emerge simply because you are paying attention. You stop chasing markers and start making decisions based on the context. Do you travel now and risk arriving tired and hungry, or do you sleep now and go in the morning? One of the strangest parts of the later game is how clearly the world reacts to what you have done. Now, this is sort of a buzz phrase that a lot of times doesn't really mean anything, but in this game it absolutely does. For example, the major town of Kuttenberg has tunnels that connect all of the main vendors' stock rooms. If your lockpicking skill is good enough, you can go into these tunnels and sneak into the storage of every single vendor in the entire city and steal their items. But they will now be marked as stolen. If you try to sell these items, a vendor will likely notice that these items have been reported missing, and they may report you themselves or give you less money for the items. You can also get pulled in the street for wearing something that has been reported as stolen, but if you leave it in your chest for a week or two, then people will naturally start to forget. The game is simply so alive in this aspect. Your actions don't disappear once your goal is complete. They will linger and reshape how the places and the people you speak to and visit will respond. Reputation is the backbone of this. Every town and settlement tracks how you're perceived, and those values aren't universal. Being helpful and lawful in one area doesn't make you just blanket good everywhere. If you're sloppy, then witnesses will matter. Being seen committing a crime carries far more weight than the crime itself, and getting away cleanly can sometimes mean nothing changes at all. If you want to commit atrocities, if you do it without anybody knowing it was you, why would you be suspected? If you get identified though, then that memory will follow you around and you might be searched days later. You could even get branded, and so that everybody in the entire land knows that you were a dirty little criminal. NPCs also exist independently of you in ways that really matter. People have their own routines, their jobs and places they're expected to be. If somebody dies, they don't respawn, they're gone now, you messed up. What makes all of this work is that the game rarely highlights how big these sort of changes are with massive notifications. You just notice it happening. There isn't some sort of big telltale style, X person will remember this decision will have consequences nonsense. But before we discuss the story in a bit more detail, if you are enjoying this video so far, then please consider subscribing, as I upload at least one video every single week. Thank you very much. But once you've learned how to operate within the game's rules, the story then starts to feel like a genuine reward for your patience. It opens in a way that's deceptively simple. Henry and Hans are sent to deliver a message. Such a simple task could not possibly go wrong, right? Well, that illusion doesn't last very long. They are ambushed, stripped of any authority they thought they had, and when they finally try to complete their mission, they are dismissed outright. Nobody believes them. Nobody knows that they are who they say they are. So what should have been a short errand turns into the spark for a sprawling journey that stretches across dozens of hours. From there, the story grows outward rather than upward. Instead of rushing toward a single goal, it pushes you into a web of alliances, feuds, loyalties and power struggles that feel appropriate for a land in the middle of a war. You spend time earning trust, proving yourself, and navigating situations where the right choice isn't always the obvious one. The cast carries this beautifully. Hans in particular evolves from a source of friction into one of the most compelling relationships in the game. His growth happens through shared failures and moments where the stakes felt personal. It took me a long time to warm up to him, as I played probably 40 hours of the game thinking he was just a dick, but when the stakes were raised and when we are forced to see these characters for who they really are, I thought he was great. There are loads of other phenomenal characters scattered across the game as well, but we would quite literally be here all day if we discussed them all, and this video is long enough already. The game also features many great plot twists. I'm usually pretty good when it comes to spotting a twist or an upcoming betrayal or whatnot, but they completely caught me off guard here sometimes, and that rush when you suddenly realise that something major has just been altered was invigorating. The game lets information surface gradually, recontextualising events you've already lived through. When a twist lands, it does really feel earned. Another thing I appreciated story-wise with this game that I thought was quite rare was its willingness to let things go. As we've already established, this is an incredibly realistic game. In real life, all of your conflicts and relationships don't just get solved nicely in a pretty little bow. Some things don't get resolved. The game doesn't rush to give you answers just to tidy up every single one of its many threads. It trusts that incomplete outcomes can still be meaningful, and that restraint gives a story a credibility that's quite hard to shake. There's also barely a line between the optional and the main content in terms of care or complexity. Side stories introduce memorable characters, moral complications, and local problems that feel just as considered as the central plot. they rarely exist just to fill time. Instead, they flesh out the world and give context to the larger conflict. Even though completing them helps build your skills and resources, the game never frames them as chores. You pursue them because given who Henry is at this point and where he finds himself, it makes complete sense that he would. When I think back to the missions I did in this game and half of my experiences, I find a lot of things in my mind that I can't remember if it was a main mission or not, because the line is just simply so blurred, and that is an extremely rare feat to meet in games despite what many games claim. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 gives you something that's more than just a power fantasy. It's competence, and that understanding reshapes how the game feels moment to moment, because the small successes begin to matter more than the big rewards. Winning a fight cleanly because you chose the right distance and timing, and your reward for that isn't a bunch of XP, it's the satisfaction that you learned and succeeded, solving a problem not because the game pointed you to the solution, but because you recognised what was possible. If you scroll through my channel, which you absolutely should, you'll see that I play a lot of games, but this experience becomes difficult to compare to anything else, purely because it asks for something most games don't: patience, attention, and acceptance that progress won't be handed to you on your terms. It's unapologetic about that, and it's why so many people will bounce off it, and why I waited so long to play it. I hate tedium in games. I don't mind asking for patience, but tedium is something that I struggle to get past. But I managed to power through and embrace it, and if you do, the payoff is the feeling that you're genuinely earning your place within this world. So when I say that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is not fun, I still mean it. It's uncomfortable, it's demanding, and it's often unwelcoming, but if you stay with it long enough to learn how it works, it gives you something far rarer than fun. It gives you a journey that feels really hard earned. Thank you for making it to this far into the video. I put a lot of effort into this one, so if you did enjoy it, then leaving a like would really make me very grateful, as well as a comment telling me if you liked or didn't like the video. We also recently enabled memberships on the channel, which can give access to early videos, so if you wanted a way of further supporting the videos, then that option is there, but there is zero pressure to do so. But that is all for now. I will see you next week.
All the way over here. Come on then. Oh, get that shit, fucker!